So that will be on our website. Housekeeping things, please use the chat function. If you want to talk amongst yourselves, you can send chats to everyone. You can send chats to all participants. Just make sure you're not whispering me directly or talking just to the panelists if you want everyone to see it. And then you can also use the Q&A function where you can click the three dots if you don't see it and then submit questions to us, and we can address those as we're going through the presentations, or we can wait to the end. So saying that, welcome, thank you for coming. We have two speakers today. We have first up Beth Kelly. She's our Director over Financial Engagements. And then we have Tammy White, who is our Deputy State Examiner, who will also be talking about our virtual audits and the audits that we'll be doing in the next round of school audits. So Beth, are you ready to take over?
I am ready.
Okay, I think you're the presenter.
Okay. Thank you, Chase. As Chase said, I am Beth Kelly. I'm the Director of Financial Engagements with the State Board of Accounts. So just a little bit about myself. I grew up in a small town in Park County. I graduated from Riverton Park High School. So shout out to the Panthers. I don't know if anybody from Southwest Park School Corporation is here today. So if you are on here and we were in live, I would probably make you stand up and do our school song. So if any of the Panthers are here, and you are very lucky that we're not live, so I won't make anybody stand up and do our school song. So anyways, I think I could probably remember it. It's been a while ago. But currently I live in Indianapolis and my kids go to Lawrence Township schools. So my graduating class from Riverton Park was about 62 kids. And so my oldest son just started high school and his graduating class is probably going to be about 2,000. So it's a big, big difference. So I have one that's going into third grade at Mary Castle Elementary, and one's, like I said, starting high school at Lawrence North. So if I have any Lawrence Township schools here represented here, I might need to have you teach me their fight song. So maybe one day we can get together on that, but I digress. Anyways, I've been with the State Board of Accounts for 22 years. I spent the majority of that time working as a field examiner, auditing local units. Then I spent about 5 years working with state agencies, and then a year ago I transitioned back to working with local government again. So today I want to talk a little bit about surviving a virtual audit. Sometimes that's referred to as a remote audit. First, it's good to know when you're going to receive an audit. So I'm going to give you a summary of what the law requires. Then I will talk about the different types of engagements you can receive. And then finally, I'll talk about what a virtual audit is and then how you can prepare for it. So when can you expect an audit? Indiana Code 511.125D is a law that stipulates when you will get your audit. This audience is very easy because you're all school corporations, and so the law says that you will receive your examination biannually. So specifically, it says as permitted under this section since September 1st, 1986, examination of school corporations shall be conducted biannually. But we can go into more specific on what time of year will we start your audit. So there are about 325 school corporations, give or take a few, that we audit. Ideally, half would be audited one year, the other half would be audited in the next year. At some point in time, that distribution became a little bit lopsided. So we have actually 189 schools that are due for the 2-year period 6/30 of 2020. And then 136 will be due for the 2-year period ending 6/30 of 2021. So those of you that are due for the period ending 6/30 of 2020, we're going to start your audits sometime in October. Now, I know some of you might have already been contacted by our office and some field examiners, but officially those audits will start to begin in October. Of course, we don't have enough staff to start you all at the same time, which that would be great, but we don't. So you can really expect to see your auditors begin sometimes between October and January. So knowing what type of examination you will get will help you prepare. Examination is used in Indiana code, but there's really various types of examinations. Many times the term examination, audit, review, they're all used interchangeably. But in an accountant's world, they actually have very, very different meanings. So to summarize, anytime you hit that threshold for a federal audit, so that's $750,000 of federal reimbursements or expenditures. If you have bond debt, if you're in the process of issuing a bond, you're going to receive an audit. Now, I won't go into the specifics behind it, but an audit has that highest level of assurance that, in our opinion, the financial statements are materially correct, or that if you are in material compliance with those federal compliance requirements. So in order for us to place an opinion, we are required to follow very specific standards. For federal audits, we follow the generally accepted governmental auditing standards. For other audits, we follow general accepted auditing standards. These are the same standards that all auditors use across the United States. It's not specific to Indiana. All auditors use it. So whether it's a governmental unit or a large publicly traded corporation, the standards are the same. And in order for us to continue to do these audits, every 3 years, we are required to have what's called a peer review. Other auditors from other states come in and they look to see how we're performing the audits to determine if we're following those standards. That peer review report is actually on our website, so anybody can see it. There's a link on the slide here if you want to go check it out. So if you've ever thought who audits the auditors, this is your answer. So we do get audited as well. So sometimes, we understand your pain when we come in there. So everybody else, if you don't have one of those, the federal audits, bond debt, upcoming bond issue, everybody else will receive a financial statement review. This is less assurance than an audit. It basically says that we are not aware of any material modifications needed to the financial statements. Again, there are standards that we have to follow. These are the statements on standards for accounting and review services. Same standards that all reviews across the United States get. I just want to point out that if for some reason we can't verify the numbers in your financial statement, then we can't issue this type of report. And what we'll do is we'll convert it to a compliance report. So for example, if you report a cash balance in your financial statements, but we can't reconcile that balance to the bank statements or we can't trace it to your ledger, then we can't proceed. So like I said, what we'll do is we'll convert it to a compliance-only engagement. We'll issue that report and we'll know any of that non-compliance that we identified. So in this case, it would be a comment in the report that the cash balance didn't reconcile to the bank balance or ledger. So the biggest difference between an audit and a review is for an audit, we are required to gain an understanding of your internal controls and then communicate any deficiencies in those controls that we find to you. So we're also required to obtain enough evidence to support the material amounts in your financial statements. Oftentimes we use sampling for this. For review, we're not required to gain that understanding of internal controls. And we only need to perform procedures to obtain limited assurance on whether the financial statements are free from any material modification. This is typically done by just comparing previous years to current years, inquiry of any changes that occurred. We can do sampling if that inquiry alone doesn't give us that limited assurance. All in all, an audit takes about 2 to 3 times longer to complete compared to a review. So moving on, what is a virtual audit? Sometimes we refer to this as a remote audit, but it means that 85 to 90% of the work we will do will be done off-site. So currently with the pandemic, it might be more like 95%. We're going to ask you that you upload supporting documentation and that you communicate with us using either a phone call or our computer using virtual meetings and email. We've actually been working towards this process for several years now. Those monthly and annual gateway uploads were part of this work. when the governor issued that stay-at-home order last March, SBOA really did have a good mechanism in place to continue auditing. I know most of the schools it was actually good timing because we were pretty much done with the schools and moving on to our next round of engagements. But since March 15th, we've actually filed 712 reports, and this has pretty much been all done remotely. So it does prove that it can be done. So while we were ready for this, unfortunately, it might have been a surprise to a lot of our clients. So now that we have a few months under our belt, we kind of know what works and what can be improved on. So, and I'm sure we're going to continue to make improvements as we continue this process throughout the rest of the year and then beyond. We've received a lot of feedback from those that have already been through this, and we hope to continue to receive the feedback as we move forward. So as we begin our audits this fall, please give us that feedback. Tell us the good along with the bad. If you find something that you really like, let us know. So then we know what's working, and then we can focus on maybe what's not. But what does remote auditing really mean? So we are using technology to send and receive documents, to hold meetings like entrances and exit conferences, and to communicate throughout the engagement. So with the current pandemic going on, our staff are all set up in a home office, or to be truthfully, probably at their dining room table. In March, when that stay-at-home order came in, no one was going on site. Everybody stayed home, but now that's kind of relaxed a little bit. But we want to focus coming to your offices only when necessary. So if it's for a very specific purpose. So an example of that would be we run a sample and there's 100 claims, and it's just not practical for you to scan all of those claims in and then attach them to an email or upload them in Gateway and send them to us. So in that case, what we'll do is, we'll send you that, ask you to pull them, put them in a room, and then we'll come on site for that day and go through all of those claims. So what can you do to prepare ahead of time? So those of you that are on the schedule for this fall and winter, you may have started to hear or have already heard from some of our examiners. What they're doing is they're beginning to set up our audit projects and get some preliminary work done ahead of time. So they might send you some forms to fill out. You might receive your financial statements ahead of time to certify, and then maybe some other documents as well to review via email. Many of the documents that we need are already part of those monthly and annual Gateway uploads. But as we begin to use them, we're about a year and a half now, excuse me, through that process of you uploading them. But as we've started to see them come in, we do realize that there's more that we need. So we're working to amend that directive so we can get more of that stuff ahead of time, and you don't have to wait till we ask for it to upload it, that throughout the year you can be uploading that. But in the meantime, our examiners may request that you upload additional documents in order to prepare ahead of time. Tammy White's going to talk to you a little bit about a project that we're working on to capture your data and use it instead of getting the printouts or a PDF of your ledgers. So again, some of you may have already been working with our team on this project, so we really appreciate that. But Tammy's going to talk a little bit more about that later, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that. Meetings, they can be held virtually anytime. So it's not just the entrance conference or exit conference, but anytime you would have walked over to the auditor or the auditor walked over to you in person, we can do this virtually now. So similar to what we're doing here, I can see you, you can see me, we can talk back and forth. We have those programs in place, so you won't need them, but we will invite you to join using the invite usually comes through an email, and there'll be instructions on how to join that for the first time. But in order to make the most of it, a computer with speakers and a webcam are ideal. They're pretty cheap to buy, very easy to install, but if you don't have that, if you don't have a speaker or webcam to participate, it's although those are encouraged, they're not required. So don't go running out and buy those because I said you had to. They're not required. we do have phone numbers that you can call in to the meeting. So you can join on your computer, but then you use your phone to hear and talk back and forth. So it's a workaround, and it works pretty well. We had a meeting, Tammy and I had a meeting just a few days ago with somebody that didn't have a microphone or speakers on their computer. We had that call-in number, and they connected both ways, and it worked fine. So, like I said, there's workaround. Don't be afraid to ask your auditors to help you navigate through this technology. It was all very new to them in March, so they know the struggles, and they're very willing to walk you through how to work it. Many times we would work in your office. Like I said earlier, we would walk over to your computer and ask you to pull something up on your screen. And since we're not there, we can't do that, but we actually can. We can actually do that through screen sharing. So as you connect using Microsoft Teams, is probably going to be the biggest platform that we use. There's a screen sharing mechanism. So you just share your screen, and the auditors can see exactly what you're talking about right on your screen. So be open-minded. Like I said, be honest with your auditor. That communication is really the key that will make this work well. So if you don't understand what your auditor is asking for, pick up the phone and call them, or ask to set up a virtual meeting with them. Try not to use email too much for back and forth conversation. It's really, really hard to understand tone in an email. And sometimes it can really come off as harsh or demanding. So for example, I might send you an email asking if you were able to get those 5 claims that I asked for last week. So when I wrote it, the tone that I'm trying to convey is, I was wondering if you had a chance to look for those claims we talked about last week. But when you get the email, you might read it like, I was wondering if you had a chance to look for those claims we talked about last week. So that's why phone or virtual meeting, that voice is so much better, because you can actually hear the tone that is conveyed, and it just helps with that communication. Email in the past has really been our sole use of communicating virtually. So it's going to be hard to give that up, but we need to try. We need to make that voice our first choice. So our auditors have been instructed to use email to request documents, but as a last resort for conversation. So I ask you to do the same as well. Prepare ahead of time. So even after this pandemic is over, we probably won't go back to working on site every day of your audit. This is going to be our new normal. Right now, I think pretty much everybody is back to working in their offices on a regular basis, but what might happen in the next few months? We're continuing to see increases in new cases. What might happen September, October, November? So what does your office plan to do if March happens all over again, and everybody says that you can't come back to the office? How do you plan to get your work done? So this actually includes how you plan to get your auditors the document they need to complete the audit. The federal government still requires that your audit is to be filed by March 31st, 2021. So do you have a plan in place for your fiscal staff to access the needed documents? What about those federal programs that may be audited? School lunch, Title I, special education, they need those directors need a plan as well. So planning now for a possible shutdown will allow us all to continue what we need to do and to work our essential jobs. Currently, we have a staff of 252 on our agency, and of that, 174 are the ones that work specifically on local unit engagements. Everybody's adjusting well to this new normal, but when asked them what they miss the most, what I hear the most is the officials being with you, visiting your communities, their favorite restaurant in your communities that they've been going to year after year. So, we do look forward to being able to come on site, even if it's just one day a week. So, and I hope that you look forward to seeing us as well. So there's a lot more to say, but in the essence of time, I'm just going to run down a quick list to help you. So first of all, like I mentioned before, try not to use email for conversations. Pick up the phone, call, or request that virtual meeting. Make sure that you have uploaded all the required monthly and annual uploads in Gateway. Make sure they're legible. Take the time to respond to auditors' requests. So even if you don't have that documentation readily available, send them a quick reply to say, hey, I got your request, I'm working on it. Again, maybe if you can give them a date in which you think it could be ready. Hey, I got your request. I can have those claims pulled by Monday of next week. So that they know that you got it and that you're working on it. The SBA auditors are using the Gateway Direct Request application to obtain your documents. So you will receive an email from Gateway requesting that you upload certain documents. We don't want you to send those documents via email. So Gateway is a secure portal, email is not. So while not all documents have sensitive information, we don't want to have to worry about which ones do and which ones don't. So we want to make sure that we're uploading all of those documents in Gateway. And communication, like I said before, communication is really key on making this process work. So when your auditors come in, talk to them about what your current office hours are. Are there any restrictions to entering your building? Right now, face masks are required in the state, so we understand that. But what else is, what other restrictions are there? Be honest with your auditor. If you don't understand what they're asking for, ask them for clarification. Again, preferably in a voice meeting, like a phone call or virtual meeting. Like I said before, hearing and seeing each other can make this process work so much better. Just to reiterate, when you receive a request for documents, it's good to acknowledge that request and then give an idea of when you might be able to fulfill that request. Be open to using technology. And then last but not least, if you have any suggestions on how to make this process better, please share. We are very open to hearing what you have to say, suggestions, tell us what's good, tell us what would be better. So, this is an ever-changing environment and we're going to be moving forward. And so, well, I think it's a good process now. Everything can always be improved. So I think that's all that I have to say. Here's my name and email address and phone number. Chase will probably post these slides on our website, but feel free to email me or call me if you have any questions or concerns. So I think we'll maybe wait. Chase, is there any questions now, or you want to wait till the end to do questions?
I've had two. One you might want to answer now.
Okay, sure.
One school asked, our district uses Google Meet, so that's something in Google Calendars. Is this an option for them?
We like to use our platform. So right now we're using Microsoft Teams. So I think you should just talk with your auditor at that time to see if schools might be a little bit different with their technology and they might have some stricter policies on there. But, there are some secure platforms that, or unsecure platforms that we don't want to use. So when your auditor comes in there, if you can't access that Teams, let's have that discussion then. Like I said, preferably we would use our platform.
I'll make a comment to that too. I just know IoT, like the state IoT, they block Google Drive and Google Calendars. So if you let us know in advance, we may be able to temporarily have them let us use that, but we use Teams more so than WebEx, I think, in the field.
We do, yeah.
Jonathan, did you get any questions? You're muted. You're shaking your head, so I assume no. All right, Tammy, I'm going to drag the ball to you.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Beth. We can do Zoom. I got a couple whispers about that.
Well, thank you, Beth. I appreciate you going over the remote auditing as it stands today and kind of how we're really looking to improve this process further. We're all getting better and better at working from wherever, whenever we need to. And as leaders, I think that's the important takeaway from all that we've been doing over the last 4 or 5 months, is to make sure that we can lead the way to make essential jobs getting done, and making life as pleasant as possible for all that are trying to work with us. What I'm going to talk about are some future improvements, although I will say there is a school project that's ongoing right now that I'm really happy to talk about as well. So that's what I'm going to try to add to Beth's presentation. So just to give you an idea of the path that we're on currently at State Board of Accounts. We've started with the remote audit process. We're adding in a data capture project right now that we're doing on schools. As you know, the annual financial report is what equates to, and in your case, Form 9s added to that annual financial report equates to your financial statements and notes. And that's what we're going to audit. In order to audit, we use the information that you have in your financial systems to verify that reporting. And so your ledger is kind of what equates to this data capture that we're talking about. For years, field examiners may have come on site and asked you to pull all of your data into Excel so that we had all the transaction level data available to us. That enables us to plan, not only tie back to the financial statements, but it enables us to plan the testing and sampling that we'll be doing throughout the audit. I'm going to go through some details on this data capture project in a little bit, but just suffice it to say that that is what we're adding in addition to the uploads Beth talked about, the gateway uploads that you do monthly and annually. And then it really doesn't include the other supporting documentation that may not even be electronic yet at your school corporation. So the other supporting documents that will be covered in another part of the audit process. Then we see ourselves moving into remote access. We are just in the very, very beginning stages of working on a project for remote access with cities and towns and just a single vendor that they have. And what this would entail, as we see it, is the field examiners actually going in, obtaining access to your system through security. They would access your platform, and they would have a user role set up for them within your application for the financial system that would be read-only, something like what you would use for internal audit staff. There is usually an auditor role in most software systems. And then they would directly access the financial system. And in our case, they would access it just to capture, copy your data, your ledger data into an Excel document. They would upload that through the secure gateway portal for you. So hopefully through this process, we can learn how to work with your vendors to capture the data that we need for the audit. It can't be changed. We'll move it into a place where we can manipulate the data, test the data, and then maybe reduce the frustration that you have sometimes wondering what report we're asking for, and also trying to deal with the frequency with which we ask. And then there may be some more steps in between, but eventually we're working towards big data. And that is really statewide transactional level data. So we see this in other states. We see that other states are able to do this with all of their local governments. They capture all financial data. And then the computer assists all of the auditors with finding anomalies and exceptions. They use filtering and comparison tools, which we use currently when we get your data capture. But then they're moving into areas with artificial intelligence and bots doing drilling and mining through this data. It's also been used successfully in some other states for modeling. What will this law or Indiana code change do to our state or our local governments within the state? So that's an area where we're not there yet, but we see that we're working towards that. So I want to start out by saying we really do hear you. I know it is frustrating at times because we are not on site. We're not there to just look over your shoulder and get the report that we really need the first time without you going through gyrations over and over and over again and sending it to us and us saying that's not quite right. That doesn't contain the clearing accounts. That doesn't have all the funds that we need. I know it's frustrating to you that the state keeps asking for different things. We ask for different things than what the Department of Education asks for. We have different needs. So I do understand that this is not your full-time job to work for us, but we all have a job to do, and I appreciate that you always are very cooperative, and we want to try to do as much for ourselves as we can to try to reduce that burden. We really don't know all of your financial systems. We don't use them every day. We don't have copies of those financial systems. We do work with your vendors as much as we can, and we're starting to do that a little bit more, so trying to reduce this frustration once again. What we did with this project for the data capture, and this is what pertains to schools, we assemble a team of 8 field examiners. They have been sending information to you and requests to you for data capture if you are in this fall's round of school audits. You would have been receiving some emails over the last few months. So you may have been contacted by field examiners that you do not normally work with, that you have not heard of before. I understand that, but these particular field examiners that we've selected for this group have years and years of experience. They are the ones that their audit managers recommended them because they work with data captures and they know how to manipulate the data. They know best what your screens look like. And so this team really started back in March to delve into what systems do you use? So we went to, we got some information from Chase and Jonathan that had come from DOE on what systems you have. We also took what you self-reported within our gateway system as your financial systems. We kind of merged that data to try to get the most current information. And this is what we came up with. And of course, at this point in time, back in March, our audit plan, I think we had 182 schools scheduled in this cycle, and I think we're at 179 now. But you can see from the data that the vast majority this round will have CompuTrol. I think this is representative of what we see in the other cycle as well. Then as we worked our way down to those systems that have fewer numbers of schools, SSI, Skyward, Lao, New World, RDS. And then we got down to where there's 5 other systems that have 5 schools or less. Some of them only have 1 school in Indiana that's in our audit plan this cycle. But you can see, like, from the top, the first 4 systems in Indiana, we're covering 87% of the audits that we need to perform this fall. So those are the vendors that we concentrated with the most. And I'll try to give you an update on where we are on this status in just a little bit. So don't be too concerned if you don't have, if you have one of the 5 other systems. It just means that we're going to work more specifically with you directly than possibly with your vendor. The next thing we did was really look closely and think about what data do we absolutely need for a virtual audit. Sometimes we don't, we'd like to get things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we absolutely need it. Some of our likes might make us more efficient, but they're not absolutely necessary. So we looked for needs, and then we added in the wish list after that. But you can see just here, I'm not going to go over everything on the screen, but the basic things that we're requesting from you in this data capture are a funds report, and the challenge has been to get that on the fiscal year for you. And we sometimes don't get it in a PDF file. We want to make a PDF file because we'd like to see that it's actually your ledger balance and not a calculated balance off reports that are being run. So with that, it also says for the funds report, we want to make sure that we have all funds. I know that's one of the sticking points with you as well, because a lot of times you'll supply us with your Form 9 reporting, but that does not contain all of your funds. We can work with it if that's what we have. We're happy to deal with that and work with it. We also would like a receipts file, so that would be all receipt transactions, and you can see the types of detail that we would like to have in this Excel report. And we'd like it to be in Excel just because that is most usable for us. Moving on, there's additional information. Of course, if we ask for a receipts file, we would like a disbursements file as well in Excel. Obviously, it has different information. We use this a lot for not only your financial statement audit, but if you have a federal audit and we're auditing major programs, this goes a long way towards helping us plan that work as well. And then lastly, it may be part of your disbursements file or it may be a separate file, but we'll ask for payroll information. You can see the information that's required there. And once we start getting some of this information, it is sensitive. We know that, and that's why all of these files we will send you a gateway upload request so that you upload through the secure portal. It's very important to us that even though we're working remotely, we do not expose your records to anyone outside of your building and who would normally have that access. So I know this kind of sounds simple, but it isn't necessarily simple for you to get all of that information in all systems and to get it into an Excel file. So we understand that. If we don't get the wish list, we're happy to take what we can get and we will certainly put it to good use. However, you know, if it's not complete information or if it's not in its usable format, it may require us to do a little bit more on-site work than if we get complete data and we are able to clean it and utilize it for by manipulation with the simple Excel tools that we have. Do look for those gateway upload requests, just like I said, because I know you're getting emails and phone calls from people that you don't normally know. Their email should be one that has the extension SBOAFE at the end of it, so that you know they're a Board of Accounts person. But if you have questions about that, you can certainly contact Chase or Jonathan at any time. They're well aware of our project, and Beth Kelly and I are happy to answer questions about it as well. These are not necessarily the people who will perform your audit. They are getting this data for us in a way that they are making sure it's complete and it reconciles. So your receipts and disbursements actually lead from your beginning balance to your ending balances. And so we can see that the data is complete. We're hoping that then it will be able to be easily tied out to your financial statements by the audit team itself. Once we have reconciled and ensured that the files are there, we are using our secure portal to get those to the audit team to start building out the projects, which Beth has another team that's already doing some of that work. so that we can be ready to go and hit the ground running October 1st to get the massive number of school corporation audits done on time so that you will not be held up. We also have some optional files that you can upload if you want your audit to go a little bit more virtual this year. We certainly understand that. We are very willing to work with you on this to try to stay out of your buildings. We know you have to have social distancing. You have to have a lot of requirements for visitors on a normal year, and there's nothing normal about 2020. And we don't know how the beginning of 2021 is going to go yet. So we really will work with you to get as much through an electronic process and stay out of your way and not unduly expose our field examiners or expose your staff. So we're very willing to work with you, and some of these optional reports, if they're available within your software system, can be helpful. So the payroll distribution report, that's helpful. Payroll history reports are helpful. Obviously, both of these are very sensitive information. You will only want to send us those through the Gateway portal. Vendor history reports are helpful for testing, especially in your federal major programs. And then some of you do have electronic supporting documentation, meaning that you accept electronic invoices or that you scan them all in. If that's available and you can drill down to get those, that will just help us get further on our sampling and testing. So that would not be all supporting documents, but we may make requests for electronic supporting documents if you use those. So that's just a plus. So I said that I would tell you a little bit more about the status of where we are in working with your particular systems and through this project. So once we have the files, we verify that they're complete by doing a reconciliation process. As of Monday, we have about half of our 179 school corporations in and done and ready already for the audit teams to be assigned. Numerous others are in progress. And so if you're working with a field examiner right now, some of you are waiting for your Form 9 information to be verified before you want to finalize any adjusting entries and give us final files, which is fine. Many of others are just trying to get school started and will work with us right after you can get your head above water. We understand that too. We have a very few that we have not heard from. So if we have those few on the phone call, just expect I'll be giving you a call here soon because I'm going to try to convince you as best I can through this presentation and by talking with you in person that really this is in the best interest of all of us. I mean, you're trying to keep students safe, trying to give them the best school environment they can have during this time, and we're trying to stay out of your administration buildings and your school buildings as much as possible, so there is less face-to-face contact. The system we see most in schools right now, Computrol, has worked well with us. We're very familiar with the reports that they already had in place, and then recently they pushed out a new fiscal year-end fund balance report that was basically from our requests that we've been making to you, and you've been talking with Computrol. We've been talking with Computrol, and that we are very grateful that they did this. It used to be you could only run that report if you did it as of that day. So when you would have to run it June 30th at the end of day. And if you didn't, we didn't have a June 30th report, but now we are able to get that. SSI, once we figured out the 8 files, it takes actually 8 files on SSI to get the reports we need, but we are able to get them. and consistently. And so this small group of 8 field examiners has gotten very good with that system, and they can then reduce those files into just the files that we need, which is 4 files. And they can put all of the data where it needs to go so that the audit team has it and is ready to move forward. We've worked with Lao for years. We had some pretty good original instructions for data capture on those systems, and those have been working well. Skyward and New World are a little bit newer to us, and we're starting to see those in more and more school corporations now. They've been very cooperative. Skyward, we're working with some templates that are going to be sent to you. I think we may be sending those templates out, but if you're a Skyward client and you haven't received them yet, don't be concerned. We're still working with one school corporation in particular, and I want to thank Brown County Schools for that. They've been working with Skyward Techs and our team to see if we can get these templates to work. Then we'll get them sent out to everybody, and I think we're very close, so that we'll be able to get those data captures first time and not have to ask you to do them over and over again because they're not quite there. New World, we had a communication yesterday with that group, and although we got kind of a late start with them, they are coming through with some things, so we're going to send you weekly updates. We think that they will have a report for you to just be able to, click a button, just put in your date parameters and be able to send those files to us pretty quickly. They're saying possibly late August for that. So we will keep you in the loop. Field examiner named Kelsey Carl will be reaching out to you to give you status updates if you are a New World client. The vendors that had fewer schools than these, we've worked with the officials and the FEs, and we're getting most of what we have. If you have a particular problem, do not feel that you have to sit by in silence. Please speak up and let us know that you're kind of having an issue and you need somebody to work with you. And we'll try to get your vendor involved, and we'll try to work through that as well. Most of the field examiners on the team and off are working very hard right now to complete their federal audits by September 30th so that they will be ready to start schools, some schools, October 1st. And so that is our plan, as Beth mentioned. The next phase of this is remote access, and I'll just talk a little bit about it because I know this is not where schools are right at the moment, but obviously you have security to get into your platform. Most of the time the financial application sits on a platform that you own and are in charge of as the school corporation itself, and the vendor only has responsibilities for the application. All of the vendors we've talked to so far do have a read-only role in that application for auditors. And so we're starting this with just cities and towns and one vendor, as I mentioned. But what we will do is that the field examiners will still just do a data capture and then use the secure upload for this process. It does require us to purchase some additional software. It's the same software a lot of your IT professionals will use when they need to come in and take over your computer and run your mouse and those kinds of things, or run your cursor. So, but this is new to us, and so we still need some practice with it, and we are going to work with the vendor and see how we do with this. And we won't be able to really start that in earnest until the beginning of 2021 after we finish most of your schools. This does give us access to the transaction level data. It is remote, which is great, usually through a VPN type process. And we are then able to move that data. We don't want to manipulate the data on your system. We move it, we capture it, move it to Excel, upload it through the secured portal. And then, like I said, if you have electronic supporting documentation down to like the invoice level, then that is a plus for a virtual audit. And eventually this remote access process really could come to schools, but it is not in the works at this time. Now, beyond 2021, we're going to continue to roll out with other vendors and systems, both data capture by request and also remote access. We'll be continuously analyzing the costs and benefits of doing this, and also be assessing the working environment that we're in at the time. Eventually, this pandemic will end. We don't know what will be after that, but we just like to stay agile and prepared, just as you are doing with all of your work. We also plan to work with your IT. If you have large ERP systems, then that's more of a one-off or a custom. And so we know that we will have to work with you individually. And eventually we do want to get to the place where we have big data and we can use more of the modeling as well as using AI and bots and all of the computer assisted techniques and tools. So we are looking that direction. We do think that that is a plan that may have many steps before we get there. So with that, I really want to thank Chase and Jonathan for this opportunity to talk with you today that they've provided to Beth and I. And although Beth and I are very willing to answer any questions you have at this point, Jonathan and Chase will remain your direct sources for any information. They're well aware of these projects, but and can answer those questions if you have them at a later date. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Chase.
Thank you, Tammy. Beth, are you still here?
I am
She
still
is.
here. Yep.
I have a couple questions. One's probably specifically for you.
Okay.
Did you get the chat that I sent you? If not, I can read it.
I did.
Okay.
Yep. So the question was, I think it was probably more towards one of the co-ops. So, you know, unfortunately the co-ops have many member schools and those members aren't always on the same cycle. So at one time we did try to get the member schools all on the same cycle for then next year the member schools all changed. So it threw it off. So we can't really work towards getting them on the same cycle. But what we can do is work towards when it's your year to get the co-ops biannual audit, that we work towards doing that at the same time that we're there to do the federal testing. So I think that will help alleviate some of the concerns that you had. I think that was one of the main issues. You know, we come in to do the, I'm sorry, Chase, I could hear you typing.
Oh my God, sorry. Someone's asking what the question is. Can you repeat the question?
Let me scroll up here. If I can find it in the chat. I know you sent it to me directly. So servicing 8 districts, and those districts are on different audit cycles. Last year, the auditor showed up here in mid-August. Should we expect them before October? Also, we are due for a biannual financial. Can it be scheduled during the same time as the SBOA federal audit? The last time we had a federal audit, then the financial audit started less than a month later. So that's what I was talking about. We'll try to, so the co-ops, because they service many different member schools that are on different cycles, we do have to come in there and do some testing that supports the federal program for your member schools. That has to be done every year. So I'm not sure we're going to get there in August this year, but the hope is sometime into September that we'll come in and do that federal testing. And then if your member school, or sorry, if your school, your co-op is due for its biannual financial audit, then we'll work to schedule that at the same time. So then, you know, we'll just have that done and out of the way, and you'll be free for us for another year. So hopefully that answers your question. thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thanks, Beth. Another question. Will audit fees be adjusted because field examiners are not in the field, so no travel costs? And I think I could try to answer that one too if you don't.
Okay, I can try to answer it. So currently school corporations are $175 a day per examiner. So, you know, it's not a full cost. And so travel, that cost doesn't increase or decrease based upon the travel cost. So the easy answer is no, they're not going to be adjusted. Now, the federal side of it, it is a full cost. And so we calculate that full cost at the beginning of each, well, I shouldn't say each year, but typically it's right around the time then schools start. So we base that up on just the direct cost of our agencies for the previous year. So right now that full cost rate hasn't changed. I don't know, Tammy, if you want to add anything to that or not.
I think normally the full cost rate is updated each October, like you said, right around the beginning part of schools each year. But yes, reduced travel can affect the full cost rate, but it doesn't affect it until the following year.
Jonathan, do you have any other questions?
Beth, I have one that you may be able to answer a little bit. It's how are ECAs going to be audited this cycle?
So it'll be very similar to what has occurred in the past. So those were one of the very, very first that were done all virtually. So that hasn't changed. Where I've got an individual that is compiling all the information that is going to be needed and what we're going to do, but it'll be very similar to what you've received in the past. So there are some high-risk ECAs that will get audited during your normal school audit. Some of those high-risk factors are, you know, previous comments, big dollar values that, you know, so those will be part of your normal school audit, but all of the other ECAs will be as they have the last couple of years.
That's the only one I had remaining. So thank you all.
I was just going to skim through the comments here to see if I.
That's what I'm doing. I don't see any other questions. Yeah. So I want to end by thanking everyone for coming. It's really important that we get this information out to you and the audits that go smoothly. Again, please reach out to Jonathan or myself if you have questions on really anything. I know a lot is on your plates right now, but I do want to bring to your attention that the Gateway Annual Financial Report for Schools is due. So it'd be good to give that some attention. If you run into any issues, just contact us. So again, thank you. This is being recorded, and I will send out an email to everyone who attended when it's posted. So thank you. Thank you, Beth and Tammy.
Thank you.